All right, everybody, welcome back to Changemakers. We're here with a really special guest out of, is it Indianapolis? Is that home for you?
Yeah, we'll call it Indianapolis. Yes,
Fair enough. Indianapolis, Indiana, Mr. Kevin Butterfield. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. We made several attempts to connect, and I'm glad we were finally able to make it work. Crazy schedules will do that sometimes, but you're doing some really interesting things. I've been really, I don't want to say fixated on it, but I've been researching and looking at all the stuff you're doing, and it's truly amazing. But our audience probably has no idea who you are. They're watching from different parts of the country, different parts of the world. So can you share a little bit about your background, what you do, and who you are?
Yeah, my name's Kevin Butterfield. My background is that I used to be a chiropractor for a long time. My dad was a brain surgeon. I was always fascinated to follow his footsteps, but he said, "No, don't follow my footsteps. Do something more natural because with what he does is when he gets to the bad stuff, when he comes back out, he said it's all bad. There's got to be another way." So I went the holistic route and went to um, do the chiropractic stuff. Um, Now, when I was a kid, he was the doctor for the Detroit Tigers, so I always used to go to home games with him. I never got to see a home game because he always got called in to do, emergency surgery. So he put me in the observation booth. So I saw a lot of brain surgeries live, from the age of 6 to 8. Um, so a side track of that one, or on the same track, is I was a avid race fan. I just always loved racing. And I always researched and looked at frame by frame all the videos of crashes, and I wanted to change that so where the drivers wouldn't die or they wouldn't get killed, or they'd still get hurt, they'd still have a crash, but I mean there's got to be something to do to make racing a little bit safer. So as I grew up, I got some racing safety stuff that Formula One uses and IndyCar uses today to keep the cars more on the track and out of the fence. um, that's one of my passions is racing. You probably see a helmet behind me. That was Scott Brayton's helmet that he won the pole with at the Indy 500. He was killed the next year though. But I was a bully as a kid. In third grade, I was a mental bully, not the physical type. And this one kid that was different, nobody knew what was wrong with him. Um, he would look up to me like I hung the moon, but I was teasing him the whole time and he didn't know it. He didn't realize it. But he was always at my hip. This was in third grade. Um, I was like that. And I remember one instance where they bought the trampolines in school. That day it was some kind of new thing. And, so they would drop it off at our school. We'd all get to bounce on it. And then they would take it to another school. And I remember the kid I was a bully with, Andy Silverman. I mean, always he's a great kid, but so he would always stand. I told him to stand in the back of the gym while we'd all go jump on the trampoline. He never got to jump on the trampoline because every time I come by, he goes, "Can I go now? Can I go now?" I said, "No, stay there." So what he did was the last time I went around, I said, "Go jump on the trampoline." I remember to this day, it's so vivid. He was running towards the trampoline in the gym, and the bell rang. Class was over. And the teachers tried to get him, and he was trying to get around him. Just so he wanted to touch it or just jump on it. And he never made it. The trampoline. So he came back to me, and he was crying. So it was from that point on in third grade that I said, "Hey, if I can say no to a kid and make him cry like that, I'm never going to say no to the kid again." So we went our separate ways. He went where he was going in third grade. I went where I was going. But from that point on, I was now the physical bully for the different kids that were different, right? They'd come to me if they were getting picked on. I'd go to them um, and give them their due justice. So, but it was like that throughout my life. I mean, from that point on, I was always watching out for the underdog. I was always, they're put on the other side of the fence for some reason. They don't need to be there. They need to be on our side of the fence with us. So I thought about this kid forever. Went in the army, went in Europe and stuff like that. And I tried to get a hold of like Dr. Phil and Oprah and say, "Can you find Andy Silverman for me? I have got to talk to him again because we lost touch." He went to a different school or moved or something. And I said, "I want to." find this kid and tell him, first of all, that I'm sorry for the way I treated him. But second of all, I wanted to thank him because he made me who I am today. Um, Always helping the underdog, looking out for him and stuff like that. So I never got a hold of him, but I always thought of him. He never left my mind. But then with the advent of Facebook, I found him. Right, I found him on Facebook, and this was 40 years later. And I said, Andy, give me your number. I got to call you. I got to talk to you. So I was just going to tell him in person what I was going to tell on Oprah. So he picked up the phone. I just kept rambling on about everything as if we were still in third grade and stuff. And he said to me, I want you to help me find a girlfriend. I said, that's no problem, Andy. You got to put in a tic tac, open the door, get her flowers, tell her she's pretty, all this stuff. And then it was quiet for a second. And he goes, what if she doesn't let me jump on a trampoline? I said, well, Andy, then that's not your girl. Right. So he carried that around for 40 plus years. And I carried it around for 40 plus years. And I said, Andy, we got so much things to do. And that's why I founded the Brain Force Center. Right. And I'll get to that in a second. So I said, Andy, we're going to have a foundation with our Brain Force Center. We're going to call it Andy's Trampoline. So people that are different can afford to get the care they need. So the Brain Force Center is a deep brain neurofeedback center with advanced protocols. I wanted to find something that would help the Andy Silvermans in the world and help everybody else that I can. If you can trace a problem back to the brain, not the timing is off on it, it's not firing right, and you can see it and you can measure it, you can change it, and that's what I want to do. And we've had many cases of people that were suicidal, on the edge, couldn't sleep, PTSD, stress, anxiety, depression, migraines, all this stuff seemed to get a heck of a lot better with what we do. So that's all I do now, is I work on the brains.
That's really cool. And, Kevin, when you were nominated, I didn't really know exactly what you do. So I went through and I started looking, and then having talked to you now a couple of times, it's amazing. You shared some things with me. That's the first time I've heard that story. And that was really, again, I'm glad you're here, because there's a lot of people like that. I have my own third grade. It's funny. I have my own third grade story.
Yeah.
And I will never forget it. I don't know if the kid that was involved will remember it, but I'll never forget it for my entire life. And it's interesting. That seems like a pivotal or a critical age for those types of things. But so you were nominated because you're doing some things that have made a really big impact on a specific group of people. And you've explained a little bit about that, but it looks like you just covered what I was going to ask you next, which is what inspired you to do that. And it's Andy Silverman. So you still talk with Andy today?
Yes, I do.
Very, very cool. Kevin, as you were putting it together, you're involved in a lot of different things. So you talked about some of your desires around suicide prevention. And was there a catalyst for that? Was there something that happened, or was it that incident that triggered your work in that field too?
No, I mean, we've had people that come in. A friend of mine said, hey, my friend has a kid that is suicidal and he can't get into the stress center locally because it's full. Can you help him? I said, well, maybe. Let's try it. So I met him in here like at midnight, and this kid was like at the end of his rope. I could just tell. And he was sitting with his dad in the room, and the friend who used to be a patient of mine was sitting in there too. And I said, look, I don't know what your story is. You have a great brain, right? So I bet your brain is having a battle within itself and that you can't referee or stop it, right? So I said, I'm going to tell you the dumbest thing you've ever heard in your life is I'm going to put this cap on your head, and you're going to hear some noises, and it's going to pull you back on the ledge, because that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And I said, I just told you that. So it actually did. I mean, so we put the cap on his head, and he started off looking down, right? He was looking down, didn't want to, hear anything or talk to anybody. And then we put the hat on, and then he started to, you can see his shoulders just drop like he was relaxing. And then he was smiling, looking up at his dad, saying, I'm sorry. And he was, he's fine today. Right. And he was totally done with everything. Right. So, it's stuff like that. If you can see it and you can measure it in your brain, you can change it. Most of the people that are in that state are in a state called hyperarousal or fight or flight. Um, they're staring at and kids like this too. I mean, we have a lot of kids that come in and they are the same way. So they're stuck in fight or flight mode, which means they're looking at the door ready for some threat to come in that's not coming in. But they're on the edge of their seat on high alert. If their mom tells them to clean their room or do your homework, they're going to go ballistic. I can't. I'm too busy looking at the door, ready for this threat to come in. Then I get neutralized, right? So, in people that are stuck in fight or flight for so long, it switches over automatically to PTSD. Your brain just says, "Okay, let's just chuck it in that drawer and leave it there." So, it's the thing with the advanced settings and advanced protocols you can do is you can unstick the fight or flight stuff, and it happens like right then when they're sitting there. You can see the changes that they go through. Um, so, what we do, I'll try to explain it, and I'll use my little finger here. Um, is we take that raw brainwave signal. You've seen the heart signal on a heart monitor. Well, the brain has some kind of something you can see as well, the waves. So we take that raw signal, break it down into 9 distinct brainwave frequencies, and put that in a box. We compare that box with somebody your age, your gender, your left or right handedness, and we know if that box has too much or too little electrical activity compared to a quote normal brain database. So either one of those could be a problem, but probably not. It's one box, right? So if we take that box and we put 6,800 of them, 6,800 boxes around the brain and get a complete 3D picture of your brain, we know where the misfire is. We know where the timing is off in your brain. And let's say out of those 6,800 boxes, for example, 200 boxes are the problem. The problem being what? Addiction, stress, anxiety, PTSD, you name it. If we can target those 200 boxes to make a change, it changes the brain. The brain knows where it wants to be and wants to stay there. It's like when we look at the monitor, we got a box that we look at. So let's say your white line is your frequency. It's got to be on a straight line, smooth at the bottom of the screen. That's what we want to see. Most of the people that come in, that line is going like this, up and down, even outside of the box. You can't even see it. So it'll go up and down through that box. It's as if it's walking through a dark room and does not know where the exit is. And it will continue through its life not knowing where the exit is. I know where the exit is. Or this machine and technology knows where the exit is. So it'll follow. If the white line's going like this, a green line will follow it, cross over it, make a different sound. Um, let's say it's just in those 200 boxes. And you can watch it minute by minute. Is your brain going to follow that green line because the green line knows where the exit is? And the answer is yes. So you'll see it go from way up here and start to smooth out and stay down where it should be. So you got those 200 boxes where it should be. The brain is in a better state, and usually it'll take, could take 30 to 40 sessions of doing this. Well, once you do it, your brain knows where it wants to go. Your brain knows where it wants to stay. And I tell people that come in here, we can talk for hours to figure out what the trigger was to make your timing off in your brain. We can figure it out, but it's not going to help me today, right? I got to know where your brain is today, and I know where it's got to be tomorrow. So, but all the other stuff, I'll listen to your story, but I don't really need to have a story. It could be concussion, could be, anything that you took that is neurotoxic that your brain couldn't process out. Anyway, the timing is all cattywampus and your symmetry of the brainwaves are all messed up. So we can get that back to where it goes. So that's where, we're not anti-talk therapy. We're not anti-medicine. There's a time and place for all that stuff. But if 200 boxes that you can find is your problem, you can't just talk to those 200 boxes and say, you better behave and stay where you should be. That doesn't happen. Medicine increases or decreases your brainwave frequencies, but all of them. It'll get to the 200 boxes, but what about those boxes that don't need anything? That's where you got to adjust the milligrams of the dosage or change. Let's do this one, that one. It does get to those 200, like I said, but again, also the areas of the brain that don't need anything. That's where you can get some side effects coming in. But again, I'm all about go with what works, whatever that is,
So what areas, Kevin, could you see changes in people? Is this something that could, I guess, let me reframe it. Is this something that could work with kids with ADD or ADHD?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We see all those kids, I wanted this practice to be like an Andy Silverman practice, help all those kids. Right. But then those kids have parents that are addicts or have, other mental health problems, stressing that. So we said, okay, well, so we pulled away from doing the pediatric Andy Silverman kind of thing. And, autism kids, spectrum, all this stuff, they came out of the woodworks. So we did, if you had a brain that's struggling, that you qualify, let's work on you. So, but yeah, we've taken kids that, are D and F students to AB. We've taken spectrum kids that wouldn't look at you, the blank stare, and made them look at you and be more socially acceptable, I guess. And I tell people that have really bad down the autism route that they're really bad. I said, we're not going to make your kid a Heisman Trophy winner. We're going to make them as best they can be with what they have. And it is a big change. I mean, the autism kids won't look you in the eye because the brain waves in the back of their head where their visual cortex is so much on fire that to look at you, they got to put more information back in the visual cortex. And that's way too much fire for them to handle. So they can't handle it. So they try not to look at you and they try not to process what they're looking at. So if you calm the fire down back there, hey, that's doing something, right?
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's going to be people that see this interview and they think, oh my gosh, could he help in some way? So first things first, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to brainforcecenters.com and all the contact information's on there.
Perfect.
And we have people that I reserve consult time for people around the world that have questions. So even though I can't get to them, I will talk to you and I will help you find somebody who does what we do. There's different levels of neurofeedback. I mean, there's some neurofeedback that you can take home and do it. Right. That's really not as clinical as what we do. There's not a lot of people, I guess, in the world that do it at this level that we do, but there are. Hopefully more and more people will do that. Our goal is to expand what we do and use the racing stuff, IndyCar, NASCAR as our like brand ambassadors and have a car in those series to get this word out across the country and hopefully around the world more. So more people do this, right? I mean, if you look at the statistics on mental health stuff, we're trending in the opposite direction we should be trending in.
For sure.
So what does that tell you?
What we're doing is not working.
Yeah, I'd say. So, I mean, this is not a cure-all, catch-all kind of thing. I mean, it helps, the standard 85% of the people it helps, 15 it doesn't, right? We haven't seen our 15% it doesn't yet because with the advancement of this technology, you can adjust stuff on the fly. You know what I mean? It's not a home trainer kit. It's like taking home home prostate checker kit. It's going to get messy, but I mean, sorry. You can
I processed that for a second.
Sorry.
No,
stuff doesn't go through customs with me. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I totally get it. No filter.
Okay.
I appreciate that. So last thing I want to throw out there at you is somebody might see this and feel inspired, to take action with their own Andy Silverman situation, their own third grade story, their own memory that they want to have an impact on. So I'm sure you encountered challenges. I'm sure you've encountered frustrations and failures along with the successes. So what's in the last 30 seconds we have here? What's the advice you would have for someone that wants to do something to make an impact in their community like you've made in this one?
What would they have to do? I mean, oh, that's a good question. I mean, if you want to do this, I mean, I would research as much as you can on it. What we
No, I
do
just
is
mean anything for people that are like, you followed your passion and you're making a difference. Other people have different passions and they feel stuck a lot. I guess this is kind of funny. I'm talking to you about people being stuck in their mind, right?
Yeah.
But they might feel stuck, like they can't make an impact. They don't have the background that you have, and they don't know what to do to make an impact. Maybe theirs is their community is a mess or their school system is a mess, and they want to do something. So what do you say to people that feel stuck?
You're not stuck. I mean, I wouldn't say you're stuck. I'd say keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. Then that you'll unstick your feet out of the concrete sooner or later. But yeah, I went down a different route until I jumped on this route, right? But this route has always been my passion and I guess my everything, right? And I sooner or later I would get there. I had to go through everything else I did before to get to this point. But I mean, I don't know. I wasn't stuck, I guess. I was just occupied doing something different. But I'd say keep going.
I appreciate that. One of our change makers that we talked to, I asked that question to, and they said something really cool. And they said, I was scared, right? So my advice to you is do it afraid.
Yeah,
And I thought that was cool advice. And yours is just keep digging. I love it.
Keep digging. Keep digging. You'll get there.
All right. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for the work you're doing in this community. Hopefully, all the change makers here will be united shortly after this. There's 45 change makers from around the world that we highlighted. I know you've already connected with one, and I've got another one in mind that I really need you to connect with. Their work in the autism field is amazing. Yeah. And I think you'll be a good partner for them. But guys, we got more change makers coming up right after this. I'm going to throw it back to my colleague and partner, Larry Cohn.
Thank you very much. I'll see you.